I discovered my wife was pregnant with my brother's child. My mother knew everything and covered it up. I filed for divorce, and my father delivered the real punishment. Hey everyone, my name is Dylan. I'm 31 years old, male, and I work as a project manager at my father's construction company in Phoenix. I've been married to Eliza for 5 years. I earn $5,000 annually, plus bonuses. I've been in the industry since I was 15, and I earned every promotion through hard work. I bought my house 3 years before getting married for $285,000, and I have no debt other than the mortgage, which I've been aggressively paying down. Today, the property is worth about $380,000. Eliza, my wife, is 29 years old and a nurse. She earns about $70,000 a year. I met her at a sports bar near the hospital when she was about to graduate. She was attractive, seemed focused, and had her life together. I thought I had found someone forever. I should have paid more attention to how she flirted with the bartender. My father, Arthur, is 56 years old and built his company from the ground up. He started with hammer and nail jobs at 18, saving every dollar. He took night classes to get his contractor's license. He spent his 20s and 30s working tirelessly on residential projects, building a solid reputation. By 40, he was signing commercial contracts, and now he has teams working on multi-million-dollar projects. He's an old-school guy. He believes respect is earned, everything is achieved through effort, and he doesn't tolerate excuses. My mother, Adele, 54, is retired. She used to work in an administrative position in the school district. Now, she dedicates her time to spending my father's money and gossiping with her church friends. She thinks she's a saint, but she badmouths everyone behind their backs. And then there's Damien, my 26-year-old younger brother, my mother's spoiled child. He's never had a real job. He started in Dad's office doing simple tasks and earning $55,000 a year. Dad, hoping he'd mature, delegated more tasks to him. But Damien acts like he's doing us a favor by showing up. Dad tried for years to turn him into a man. He assigned him summer jobs on construction sites since he was 16, but Damien would show up late, complain about the heat, and hide in the air-conditioned truck while everyone else worked hard. I remember when he was 19, they put him on a roofing crew in the middle of July. He lasted 2 hours under the 115 degrees Fahrenheit sun before faking dizziness. We completed the 10-hour workday. Dad was embarrassed when the workers started making fun of his delicate son. Meanwhile, I learned every trade: electrical, plumbing, framing, concrete, drywall. I started by cleaning tools and organizing materials. By 20, I was leading teams on residential projects. At 24, Dad promoted me to project manager because I delivered real results, coordinating with subcontractors, overseeing budgets, talking to city inspectors, all with successful outcomes. Eventually, Dad gave up the battle with Damien in the field and left him in the office. He assigned him basic tasks like small quotes, material orders, and handling some easy clients. But Damien acts like he's a high-level executive. He wears expensive clothes and drives a leased BMW that costs more than many people's rent. The resentment was palpable at every family dinner. Mom would praise Damien for things like arriving on time 5 days in a row while I was closing an $800,000 shopping center project. Dad noticed, but he kept quiet to avoid arguments. Damien was always envious. When I bought my house, he made sarcastic comments about how lucky some people are. When Dad promoted me, he said it was pure favoritism, ignoring the fact that I had been working my tail off for a decade while he played video games. 2 years ago, he got into financial trouble, credit card debt, car payments he couldn't afford, all from living beyond his means. Dad lent him $15,000, which he was supposed to pay back in 2 years. He made 3 payments, and then the excuses started. The first few years with Eliza were good. We had our routines. I took care of the house and finances. She took care of the social aspects and cooking. We both worked hard, planning to have children. She was a great cook, and her Sunday dinners reminded me of my grandmother's. Eliza worked 3 12-hour shifts a week, usually Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. That gave us time together and made it easy to organize everything. We had decided to start trying for a baby after our 3rd anniversary in October 2022. Eliza stopped taking birth control that month. We were committed to starting a family. We even had names picked out: Isabella if it was a girl, and Arthur J. if it was a boy. January 2023. Dad landed the biggest contract in the company's history, the complete renovation of a downtown hospital. $6 million. He assigned it to me since I had successfully led a similar project the previous year. The demands were enormous. Strict regulations, daily inspections. I practically lived at the construction site, at least 12 hours a day, even weekends. Eliza understood at first. She would bring me dinner sometimes. She knew that contract could secure our future, a promotion, higher salary, maybe even expanding the business to other cities. We planned to use the bonus to pay off the house and look for investment properties. That's when Eliza started going out with Melissa, a traveling nurse from the hospital. She said Melissa was single, fun, and knew all the cool spots in Phoenix. Suddenly, Eliza was going out 3 times a week, and we weren't watching shows together like we used to. For months, I was so immersed in blueprints, concrete schedules, and electrical revisions that I didn't realize how everything was starting to fall apart around me. Looking back, it was clear the collapse had begun long before I noticed it, but I was so focused on finishing a key project that I simply missed the signs. It all started in early February when Eliza's routine became absolute chaos. She had always worked those 12-hour shifts for 3 days a week. It was a predictable routine that we had built our married life around. But, all of a sudden, she started covering more days, extra shifts, mandatory training sessions that supposedly popped up out of nowhere, emergencies at the hospital. Her base schedule didn't change, but suddenly she was working 5 or 6 days a week. It was also around this time that Damien started showing up at our house when I wasn't there. He would arrive exhausted at 8 p.m., and Eliza, as if it were normal, would tell me that Damien had stopped by to say hi, that he had brought her coffee from that fancy downtown coffee shop, or that he had helped her fix something around the house that I hadn't had time to take care of. At first, I thought it was a positive thing. I thought that Damien was finally starting to act like part of the family, and not like that immature guy who only thought about himself. Even at the company, he started behaving more professionally. He dressed better, arrived on time, and volunteered for tasks on weekends. Dad, Arthur, mentioned it several times. It seemed that Damien was finally maturing. When we finished the hospital project in March 2023, ahead of schedule and under budget, I thought things with Eliza would go back to normal. It was a resounding success. We saved $50,000 in costs and earned a reputation bonus that my father was already planning to reinvest. But by then, what I knew as normal had been completely redefined. While I was spending 70-hour weeks away from home, even though my workload had decreased, her schedule remained just as chaotic. Extra shifts, training, sick colleagues. But now I was home more, and I started to notice things that just didn't add up. The first was the financial irregularities. I discovered that Eliza had been withdrawing $200 in cash every Friday for 2 months. When I asked her, she said that her outings with friends had become more expensive and that she preferred to pay in cash so as not to overspend on her card. It sounded reasonable, as we had always been careful with our finances, but it was the first time she had made such moves without consulting me. Then came her behavior with her phone. She was constantly texting, smiling knowingly as she looked at it, completely absorbed. But as soon as I entered the room, she would turn it face down or put it away immediately, as if she had been caught doing something wrong. She always had the same response, that it was the hospital group chat, talking about schedules or work gossip. In April, the physical symptoms started, although at that time I didn't fully understand them. She would wake up nauseous every morning at 6 o'clock. I would hear her throwing up in the bathroom. Then, she would shower longer than usual. One time, I got up to see her hunched over the toilet, her face pale. I mentioned the possibility that she was pregnant, and her reaction was pure panic. She flatly denied it, claiming it was a virus that was affecting several nurses. She assured me she had a doctor's appointment, but asked me not to go with her, saying it wasn't worth me missing work for something so minor. I knew that didn't make sense. Since she stopped taking birth control in October, she had been meticulously tracking her cycle on an app. We were trying to have a baby, so everything was recorded, and she was 3 weeks late, something that had never happened to her before. But when I mentioned it, she became defensive, with uncharacteristic aggression. "Why are you tracking my period like a creep? I can manage my own body, Dylan. Stop trying to control every aspect of my life." That wasn't a normal reaction between two people trying to become parents. For months, We had talked about cycles, ovulation, and ideal timing without any issue. Around the same time, my mother, Adele, also started acting strangely. She no longer called the landline but directly to Eliza's cell phone, and the calls were long, whispered conversations, either alone in the garden or locked in the bedroom. Conversations that lasted more than half an hour and ended abruptly if I approached. Once, I overheard phrases like, "You have to be careful with that," or "Make sure everything is controlled," and above all, "He can't find out." It puzzled me. They never got along. During the first 4 years of our marriage, they barely tolerated each other. One day, I walked into the kitchen while they were talking on speakerphone, and my mother, noticing my presence, said, "Oh, Dylan's here. We'll talk later." And she hung up. The tone wasn't that of someone planning a birthday surprise, and my birthday wasn't even close. I started to notice that Eliza's stories about work no longer matched reality. She'd say she'd covered a double shift, but she'd arrive home with plenty of energy, as if she'd been out for leisure. She claimed to have assisted in surgeries, but her clothes didn't smell of disinfectant or have traces of blood, as they usually did when she actually went through those types of procedures. The breaking point came one Tuesday in mid-April. My truck wouldn't start, and I had to come home early, around 2 p.m., with Rodriguez, one of my foremen. As I entered, I heard laughter in the living room. It was Eliza's voice, but she was laughing in a way I hadn't heard in months. Carefree, happy. When I walked in, I saw her on the couch with Damien, sitting way too close for what would be normal between in-laws. They weren't touching, but they were within that intimate space only occupied by couples who are comfortable with each other. As soon as they saw me, they separated as if I had caught them stealing. Eliza looked at me, surprised, and asked, "What are you doing here?" Damien spilled his coffee and stammered an absurd excuse about being in the area and wanting to check on Eliza since I worked so much. Everything was weird, nervous, uncomfortable, feigning a naturalness that didn't exist. I just wanted to make sure she was okay. "You've been so busy lately. I thought I could keep her company," Damien said with a forced smile. Eliza kept fidgeting with her hair and avoided looking directly at me. "Damien brought me coffee from downtown. Wasn't that a nice gesture?" she said, as if that justified everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sign, every suspicion, every excuse, they all resonated in my head at the same time. The schedule changes, the phone calls, the symptoms, Damien's sudden interest in becoming an exemplary brother-in-law. There were too many pieces that didn't fit. And something, without a doubt, was very wrong. I started carefully reviewing the interactions of the past few months, and as I did, every detail I had previously overlooked started to fall into place. Too many things didn't add up. The next day, I decided to investigate thoroughly. I started with the company records, since Damien had access to the job sites and vehicles through the fleet management system. I checked the GPS logs of his work truck for the last 3 months, cross-referencing locations with times. What I discovered was overwhelming. Dozens of stops at places that had nothing to do with our construction sites, visits to my neighborhood during work hours, when I was supposedly the only one in the family at home, a hotel in Scottsdale, restaurants located in areas where we had no active projects. Then, I compared those dates with the shared calendar Eliza and I used. The coincidence was disturbing. Every time Damien's truck appeared near one of those places, Eliza claimed to be covering an extra shift or attending an emergency at the hospital. The correlations were so perfect that they could no longer be considered mere coincidences. After that, I started to review the activity on our joint bank account more thoroughly. I didn't just look at recent transactions, I went back for months. The cash withdrawals weren't random. Every Friday, like clockwork, exact withdrawals of $200 appeared. Furthermore, I found charges at restaurants and hotels in Scottsdale, precisely on the days when Eliza claimed to be working double shifts. $110 at Fleming's Steakhouse on a Wednesday, $220 at the Four Seasons Resort for afternoon tea on a Thursday, $95 at a boutique restaurant on a Sunday when she supposedly covered for a sick colleague. I started keeping a detailed record of every discrepancy between her schedules and our finances. Once everything was on paper, the pattern was irrefutable. I decided to call the hospital pretending to have a family emergency. The nurse who answered told me that Eliza wasn't on shift that day, nor the previous ones. It was Wednesday, and according to Eliza, she had worked 12 hours the previous night and had another 12-hour shift that same night. That's when I knew I had to go further, even if it meant crossing all the lines. I had to check her email. On Thursday, she claimed to be attending mandatory training on new equipment. I feigned a stomach ache to stay home. I sat in front of the computer, my heart pounding and my hands shaking. I logged into her email account using the password we had shared since our last anniversary. At the top of her inbox, I found an email thread between Eliza and my mother, Adele. The subject line read, "Making sure Dylan doesn't find out." I felt a pit in my stomach reading that line. What were they hiding? I opened the thread and found 3 months of emails detailing Eliza's relationship with Damien. The first ones, in February, were more cautious. Adele asking her if she was sure about what she was doing, warning her that it might just be a phase. But the messages became increasingly explicit and meticulous. My own mother was giving her instructions on how to lie to me, when to fake extra shifts, what excuses would sound credible. She even offered her house as a meeting place when my father, Arthur, was playing golf or at the office. One of the emails from March turned my stomach. "Arthur plays golf on Thursdays until 6 p.m., so you have at least 4 hours. And Damien can come in through the side entrance of the garage. I'll make sure the neighbors don't notice anything unusual." Another one said, "Tell Dylan you have a double shift on Tuesday. Arthur has a meeting with contractors until 10 p.m. The house will be empty." Damien already told his roommate he's staying at the construction site all night. Then, the emails about the pregnancy. In mid-April, Eliza confirmed to Adele that she was 8 weeks pregnant. According to the gynecologist, Dr. Martinez, they didn't know if the baby was mine or Damien's, since the dates coincided with encounters with both of us. My mother's response was repulsive. "Make him believe the baby is Dylan's. He'll be a better father than Damien. What he doesn't know won't hurt him." Another email said, "Damien isn't ready to be a father. Dylan has the house, the stable job, the maturity. Let him think it's his, and everyone wins." Eliza replied, "What if Dylan finds out later? What if the baby looks like Damien?" Adele retorted, "We'll handle it if it happens. For now, make everything look normal. Have relations with him frequently so the dates match up." I spent more than 2 hours reading everything. I took screenshots, saved the most incriminating emails on a USB drive, and printed them out. My hands were shaking, but my mind felt strangely lucid. They had planned to destroy me for months, and they thought they could get away with it. I called my father immediately. "Dad, I need to see you at the office right now. It's urgent. I can't say it over the phone." 20 minutes later, we were face to face in his office. I told him everything. Eliza, Damien, the pregnancy, Mom's role in the betrayal. Arthur listened in complete silence. When he spoke, his voice was so calm it scared me. "Son, this is war. Meet me at Marcus' office in 2 hours. Don't talk to anyone until we have a legal strategy." We went to see Marcus Chun, the company lawyer. Although he usually handled corporate matters, he had a reputation for being ruthless in divorce trials. Arthur had already filled him in, and Marcus had cleared his afternoon for us. He analyzed everything meticulously: emails, bank statements, GPS records, receipts, hospital schedules. His verdict was blunt: the house was mine. It had been purchased before the marriage, and with that documentation, we could move quickly to protect everything I had built. His instructions were direct: secure all my finances that same day, safeguard my assets, document absolutely everything, and, most importantly, don't confront anyone until the legal structure was in place. My first stop was the bank. I transferred $95,000 from our joint account to my personal account, leaving exactly $5,000 so it wouldn't look suspicious. I made sure to protect my assets before everything fell apart. I verified that my premarital investments, about $140,000 in retirement accounts and stocks, were correctly registered as separate property, with no possibility of Eliza claiming them. While I was at the bank, my father, Arthur, made some strategic calls. He canceled Damien's access to company accounts and vehicles, effective immediately. He informed Linda, the office manager, that Damien would be reassigned to another position, so he would no longer need his company truck, corporate card, or building access. Damien would discover everything Monday morning when his card didn't work and his vehicle wouldn't start. At the same time, I blocked all joint credit cards except one with a $2,000 limit to prevent Eliza from trying to retaliate with impulse purchases. I also removed her as an authorized user from my personal cards. Every decision was cold, calculated, and within the legal framework. That same night, while Eliza was showering, a message arrived on her phone. It was from Damien. Can't wait for tomorrow at Mom's. Dad's working late, so we'll have the place to ourselves. Bring that thing you bought yesterday. One more confirmation that the affair was still ongoing, even intensifying. I immediately took a screenshot and sent it to Marcus, my lawyer. At that moment, I decided there was nothing left to salvage. I called my father and asked him to organize a family dinner at my house for Saturday night. I didn't need to give him details. Arthur understood perfectly what I was planning. He called Adele, my mother, and Damien separately, telling them it was a mandatory dinner, that I had a big announcement to share. He feigned enthusiasm, as if it were a promotion, a pregnancy, or the purchase of a bigger house. On Friday, I told Eliza about the dinner. As soon as I mentioned that Damien would be there, I noticed how she tensed up. She started asking nervous questions. What kind of announcement it was, why I was organizing a family dinner when I usually avoided them, if she should prepare anything special. I told her I wanted to gather everyone to share some good news. Her face fell. What kind of news? She asked. You're making me nervous. You'll find out on Saturday, I replied. I'll take care of everything. Saturday, April 29th, I prepared the dining room as if it were a battlefield. I placed the divorce papers in a manila envelope on my place at the table. In another, larger envelope, I printed the most incriminating emails for Arthur to read as well. I wrote a certified check for $15,000, the same amount my mother had convinced my father to lend Damien 2 years earlier, during one of his financial crises. My father deserved to get that money back before this family completely imploded. Eliza spent the whole day restless, asking questions over and over again. I would answer with a smile. It's almost dinner time. I made my famous tri-tip with chimichurri, the same dish I used to cook for every family gathering, intending for everything to appear normal until the key moment. My mother was the first to arrive. She greeted me with one of those fake hugs that involve no actual contact. Immediately, she started asking about Eliza and the big announcement. Arthur just looked at me knowingly, without saying a word. Damien arrived 20 minutes late, sporting one of his designer shirts that probably cost more than many people's monthly salary. He gave me that pat on the shoulder he used to feign closeness, which made me want to punch him right there. So, brother, did you finally knock up Eliza? It's about time. His mocking tone and that smug look said it all. He thought he had won some kind of competition. During dinner, Eliza barely ate. She pushed the food around on her plate while darting nervous glances between Damien and me. Adele tried to maintain superficial conversation about the weather and her church friends, but the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. When we finished, Arthur raised his beer. Well, son, what's this big news you wanted to share with everyone? I took out the manila envelope and slid it towards Eliza. Indeed, there is something important I want everyone to know. These are divorce papers. Absolute silence. Only the hum of the air conditioner and a dog barking in the distance could be heard. Eliza went pale, her hands trembling. What are you saying, Dylan? She stammered. Adele immediately went into drama mode, clutching her chest. Dylan, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Enough, Mom. I interrupted, handing Arthur the second envelope. These are 3 months of emails between you and Eliza, coordinating her affair with Damien. You've been covering everything up. Arthur started to read. Although he had suspected it, seeing the words written down made him seethe. Damien jumped up, knocking over his chair. You checked her emails? That's illegal. You can't use that in court. Is that what worries you now? I replied in the calmest voice possible. Not that you slept with my wife for 3 months. Eliza covered her mouth, sobbing. Dylan, please, listen to me. Shut up, Eliza. I didn't even look at her. Dad, read the part where Mom suggests using your golf schedule for them to meet. Adele lunged across the table to grab the papers, but Arthur held her back. Adele, what the hell is this? Arthur, I can explain. Explain what? He roared, with a fury that shook the house. How you destroyed this family. How you turned one son against the other. How you lied for months. Adele's mask cracked. She pointed at Eliza. She came to me. She seduced Damien. I was just trying to avoid a family catastrophe. Damien, with complete shamelessness, shrugged. Come on, everyone needs to calm down. Dylan works 70 hours a week. Eliza needed affection. I was there for her when he wasn't. That's when I lost control. I stood up, walked around the table, and punched him with all my might. I felt his nose break instantly. Blood splattered his designer shirt as he fell to the floor, taking a side table with him. Adele screamed as if someone were murdering her son. Arthur stood up, tall, imposing as a mountain. Get him out of my house now. Damien was lying, bleeding, on the wooden floor. He tried to say something. Dad, you can't do this. I can do whatever I want. You're fired. Funding cut. You're dead to me. Arthur, he's your son. Adele screamed through her tears. Dylan is my son. Damien proved today that blood means nothing when you betray your family. Eliza sobbed inconsolably. Dylan, the baby could be yours. Then we'll do a paternity test. Either way, this is over. You and I are done. I handed the check to Arthur. This is the money you lent Damien. He's not going to pay you back, so I am. Arthur looked at the check, then at Damien bleeding on the floor, and finally at Adele, who was trying to help him up. His gaze was icy. Adele, get your coat. We're leaving. You and I have some serious things to discuss. When they left, Eliza and I stood in silence, surrounded by what remained. A broken chair, drops of blood on the floor, the scattered divorce papers on the table, and the remnants of dinner everywhere. What's going to happen now? She asked. Pack what you can and get out of my house. This place is mine. You have until tomorrow morning to decide where to go, but you're not staying here. I replied without raising my voice. She nodded silently and went upstairs to gather her things. I was left alone in the dining room, feeling, for the first time in months, at peace. Everything was resolved quickly from that point on. The divorce process was swift, thanks to all the evidence I had. Eliza tried to ask for spousal support, but Marcus, our lawyer, rejected her request immediately, based on the proof of infidelity and the fact that she had a stable income as a nurse. Although divorce in Arizona is no fault, infidelity is still relevant in the division of property and allocation of financial support. In the end, she only kept her personal belongings, her Honda Civic, and nothing more. The paternity test confirmed what I already suspected. The baby girl wasn't mine. Shortly after, Eliza moved in with Melissa, the traveling nurse who had been covering her fake shifts and concealing her double life. From what I heard through acquaintances, Melissa got tired of the drama in just 6 weeks. Apparently, Eliza was unbearable. She cried constantly, demanded attention all the time, and expected her friend to cover all the expenses. Meanwhile, my father, Arthur, followed through on every one of his warnings. Damien was permanently fired from the company and banned from any construction site. Furthermore, Arthur contacted other contractors in the Phoenix area, and in this industry, news travels fast. Damien was blacklisted in the only industry he knew. But that wasn't all. My father cut off all financial assistance. No more BMW payments, no credit cards, no cash to bail him out. For the first time in his life, Damien faced the real consequences of his actions, without any safety net. 3 weeks after our confrontation, he was arrested for driving with a suspended license and expired registration. We found out he had been without insurance for months because he could no longer afford it. He spent 2 nights in the county jail, and when they called Dad for help, he refused. I let him face his reality alone, he said. Maybe in jail he'll learn what he failed to learn in 26 years of indulgence. Eliza tried to contact me several times. Messages, emails, she even showed up at my work saying she wanted to fix things. I blocked her everywhere after reading a long email where, according to her, the blame for her infidelity was mine, for being too focused on work and not attending to her emotional needs. The classic cheater's speech, blaming the other person for their own betrayal. However, the biggest lesson didn't come from Eliza or Damien, but from how Dad reacted to Mom's betrayal. Arthur wasn't just angry. He acted with a cool head and precision. He'd already had suspicions about her mood swings and certain strange expenses. After learning the truth, he had Marcus audit the family finances for the past 2 years. They discovered that Adele had been financing Damien's lifestyle for over a year, giving him almost $3,000 a month in cash and credit cards that Dad didn't know existed. She had even managed to take out a second mortgage without his consent. 6 weeks after the dinner that changed everything, Dad filed for divorce. At 58, He was tired of supporting an arrogant wife and an incompetent son. Mom lost control when she saw that Arthur wasn't going to forgive her as he had so many times before. The process was tough, with no concessions. Dad kept the construction company, the main house, and most of the assets. Adele, after 15 years without working, had to take a job at a department store, earning $12 an hour, dealing with customers who treated her the same way she used to treat service staff. Damien moved in with her to a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. He tried to come back several times, apologizing and begging for his old job back. Dad's answer was always the same. You chose to betray your brother. Now live with the consequences, like an adult. The last I heard, he was working nights unloading trucks at a home improvement store, earning barely more than minimum wage. Meanwhile, Eliza had her daughter and struggles as a single mother in a small 1-bedroom apartment, working extra shifts to afford daycare. The most unbelievable thing happened a few months ago. Mom and Damien showed up unannounced at my house, with a request I still find hard to believe. They wanted me to take responsibility for Eliza's daughter, give her my last name, pay child support, and, on top of that, cover Damien's legal expenses to help him start over. Their justification was that the family should forgive each other, that past mistakes shouldn't punish an innocent child, and that I was the only one with a stable income to assume that responsibility. The audacity was astounding. Dylan, be the bigger man here, Mom said. That little girl needs a father figure, and you're the only one who can give her stability. I told them to leave immediately, that I wasn't going to pay a single penny for mistakes that weren't mine, much less assume the consequences of other people's decisions. They destroyed our family with their lies and betrayals. I wasn't going to let them ruin my future as well. I called the police and reported them for trespassing. The officer who came advised me to keep my distance and document everything. He said he'd seen many cases like mine, and that cutting off contact completely was the smartest thing to do. It's been 8 months since that dinner that changed everything. I admit the first few months were incredibly tough. I felt like I was starting over at 30, questioning everything I believed about family, loyalty, and trust. But distancing myself from toxic people allowed better things to start growing. Dad and I are closer than ever. He made me a partner in the company, with a 40% stake. We're considering expanding into commercial developments in Tucson and maybe Las Vegas. Without Damien complicating everything, the business is stronger than ever. 6 months after finalizing the divorce, I started dating again. I met Samira at a conference in Las Vegas. She's an architect, specializing in medical centers and commercial developments, intelligent, determined, with her own money and clear goals. She doesn't need anyone to support her. She is, in every way, the opposite of Eliza. I still hear about Damien and Eliza through acquaintances in the industry. He's gone through several jobs in a few months, unable to keep any of them because he's still convinced he deserves special treatment he never earned. Eliza, on the other hand, has resorted to social media asking for financial help for her daughter. The responses haven't exactly been supportive. Adele, in a desperate attempt to regain control, approached Dad with a sentimental speech about family, forgiveness, and reconciliation, but we're not the same anymore. He not only firmly rejected her, but made it clear that there is no going back for those who acted with such disloyalty. The lesson isn't complicated at all. It took me years and a ruined marriage to understand it. But now I'm clear. There are people who, no matter how much you share a last name or memories, don't deserve a place in your life. Last names don't guarantee integrity. Blood doesn't obligate loyalty. Today I focus on what really matters, continuing to build something solid, clean, and my own. I no longer dwell on the past or other people's decisions. I live in peace with those who did prove to be there when I needed them most. And that, more than justice, is freedom. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.